All right, y'all, I'm Aaron Rodriguez, and this is our Game of Thrones recap. Why are we doing this? Man, because it's the best show on television, and everything stops when it's on. It's like football season without commercials, and just like it's got nudity in it too, so just much better. I don't know, there's already a bunch of these recap videos out there, but man, come on, one now. One more can't hurt. So we're going to talk about Season 7, Episode 1, Dragonstone. And we're going to do this later on in the week because, I've never really been one to be the first to the party. I'm usually always kind of like the last person there. So, we're going to look at this episode again, and we're going to talk about also what people caught, and what people missed, and what happened in the episode, and then what kind of happens next. All right, so you wait all year for Game of Thrones to start, and then you wait all day for it to come on at 8 or 9 o'clock, or no matter where you are, and everybody's got their Game of Thrones rituals. I don't know about y'all, but my wife and I, we like to have a little, we have our drinks ready, we have dinner already, got to turn off all the lights, and then everybody we just kind of sit and we just watch, and we don't speak to each other for an entire hour, and we're just glued to the TV, and we each got our favorite characters and all, and there's no sound except from the show. And then our dog, who's just like wondering, what the fuck? Why isn't anybody paying attention to me anymore? He just keeps like barking, and we just, man, it's a trip. All right, so the show starts, and then we see Arya. Well, we don't see Arya first. Really, we see Walder, but by the end of the scene, we know that it's Arya. So we'll start by discussing that character first, right? So this is the 7th season. So where's this character come from up until this moment? Right, and we've known that she's been a soldier from the beginning, although she's been one of the youngest Starks. Right, she outshoots Bran in the pilot and wants to be a fighter. So much that she gets her dancing instructor Syrio Farrell. She gets Needle from Jon. She does have her own direwolf, as all Stark children had. Right, Nymeria was hers, sent away, may come back. She's been through a lot, right? Arya has. She's witnessed Ned's death. She was kind of shielded there at the last moment, but she knew what happened and really has been displaced since then. She kind of wandered a bit in season 2. Came across Jack and Hagar. Cupbearer for Tywin Lannister a little bit. Then ran into the Brotherhood Without Banners, and then kind of ran into the Hound. That's more into season 3, kind of outside the Red Wedding. So again, around the family, her family's death. The Hound and Brienne, that whole thing, faceless men. She trained assassin, and then now getting out of the faceless men, that whole ordeal. So, that's all 6 seasons of where Arya's been through, and now she's back in Westeros. And we know at the end of last season that she's, that she killed Walder Frey. Man, so where is she? Physically, but mentally, right? She's a killer. She's still a killer. And she can do that without remorse. The cold open showed to that. And that was, so we'll talk about that now, the cold open. And that was just, whew, how many people saw that coming? Everybody was kind of guessing about who would, get introduced first and where it would go. But that was pretty good, right? So there's this game that the show producers play. Where it's like, how quickly can you find out that this isn't Walder Frey? It's not a flashback. It's not one of Bran's visions, but it's actually Arya wearing his face, So they kind of litter clues from the very beginning, where he's kind of acting out of character. This is the second feast in a fortnight. He's celebrating with his family. He's gathered every Frey who means a damn thing. So, it kind of sets it up, right? Then they bring out the wine, and, they kind of switch it out to a better wine. And you never really know Walder to bring out better wine at anything. And then he stops the girl or the woman next to him from drinking. So, now kind of that it's Arya. But by that time of the toast, if you didn't really figure it out by then, maybe you were a little behind, but it was pretty good. And then after Arya makes sure that every Frey has drank from the cup, then the compliments turn more to mockery, and man, just with perfect deadpan and delivery too. It was, it was really good. And then once people start to cough up blood and start to realize something is wrong, then then the threats come, and Arya gives her speech, and it is just, man, it's just glorious. And then once the last of them falls dead, she just Mission Impossibles it. Just rips off the mask and turns to the Frey girl next to her and just like says, "The North remembers, and winter came for House Frey." And then boom, that was it. She's just like, "I'm gonna walk out this room, check the damage on the way out, and then just roll credits. Time to go. Game of Thrones, we're back." And then the opening credits happen, and that's always fun because the theme song is incredibly powerful. But then we want to always see the locations in which they show, because we don't want to know the focal points for the first couple episodes. So of course there's King's Landing, and that has the stag sigil still on it, so that's a big deal. So that's Cersei and Jaime. We'll be talking about them there. We knew that, right? Dragonstone is next. That's the title of the episode. Of course, that was going to be a big deal. That's Dany and Tyrion. They're going to be there. Next, they show the twins, so we know that Arya just came from there. They show Winterfell, so that's Jon and Sansa. The Wall. It would be next, man. They always show the Wall, so that's always way up there. That's Tormund and Bran, and then Old Town. We hadn't seen Old Town before, and that's because Sam's at the Citadel. So something's gonna happen there, and we got to know about that. All right. So then after that, we see Bran, and it's it's either a vision, maybe not a vision. It looks like he was actually kind of warging, but I don't know. So we see the Night King coming. Right, winter has come. But we had been hearing that forever. But the Night King and the army, they're still dead. They're still on their way. Right, they're still en route, even though winter is officially here. Right, so this season may be about the war between Cersei, and next season might be finally the war between the living and the dead, because that's kind of what they've been setting up, and that's going to be, that's the end one, that's the end game, right? So as they're all walking, we kind of see that they have giants too. So that was the thing, that they have mythological creatures. It's not just like this endless sea of just humans that die that could come back, but now they have giants. So, that poses, could they then have dragons? Because that's always been a big theory among book readers, right? Is that, that the Ice King gets an ice dragon. So I don't know. We'll see kind of what happens there. So then Bran now makes it to the Wall. Right, so he was south of the Wall, then north of the Wall for a few seasons, now back south of the Wall. And now that he is south of the Wall, he and Mira, now that they have made it there, it's kind of, I guess, now safe to assume that everything north of the Wall is, like, dead. Dead or, like, half dead, because Benjen Stark's still out there, because the magic that prevents the Night King from crossing the Wall is the same magic that prevents Benjen from crossing the Wall. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but Benjen's still out there. Yeah, so Bran, what about him, right? He is the three-eyed raven now, right? So he is the all-seeing kind of like time-traveling prophet, so that's cool. He does fuck up, though, at times, because he did get the old three-eye raven killed, but his character in general is important because his visions of time, that's how we know things as an audience, right? That's how we know about the Night King and the White Walkers and how they were created, with dragonglass. And, that's how we know about Jon Snow, his parents, being Rhaegar and Lyanna. And that's how we'll learn other things that I'm sure, man, this can be real good too. So the pilot, at the very beginning, 7 seasons ago, that ended with Bran falling out of the window, almost dying, and then becoming paralyzed. So it kind of seemed like his character was going to be incredibly limited. But now he is definitely greater than life. After that, we get another good scene, man. There's just scene after scene of good ones that they get, kind of here on the outset, and it's at Winterfell, and we get to see Jon and Sansa sitting there in Winterfell. We see them ruling together, and, it's great. Jon's in charge, technically, and we kind of see that it comes into play here at the end of the scene, but Sansa was able to speak her mind, although she was overruled. So, and then even though she was reprimanded for it after. So there's there's an issue that kind of comes into play there. But, this isn't Ned's Winterfell, where Catelyn, though was strong, wouldn't dare stand up to Ned in front of the other lords of the North. Sansa thinks it best, because like they talk about in the scene, they can't have half the population fighting. If Sansa doesn't speak her mind, then they have, half the brain trust leading, and that can't possibly be good too. So, that friction between Jon and Sansa, that will be developing as it kind of goes on, so that'll be kind of fun to watch. But, so these characters are sitting next to each other, Jon and Sansa, and, they've come from incredibly different places. So I don't know. We'll talk about the scene here in a moment, but let's kind of first talk about, how Sansa got here. Sansa, we first see her at the beginning of the series 7 years ago, kind of like as just this little naive, young girl who just wanted desperately to marry Joffrey, which turned out to be a horrible decision, and begs and pleads to, for her father and for her father to take them to King's Landing. And then, and that's when just everything goes bad, kind of off the bat. She's tormented from Joffrey from the very beginning, and she had to watch Ned die. So there's a lot that kind of happened there, but she learned a lot from Cersei, and she learned a lot from Littlefinger. She's been tormented by Ramsay, so one other man that was never good too. Is married to Tyrion, though. That is also a thing. Married Tyrion and then left after Joffrey died, and now that Tyrion's back in Westeros, man, I don't know, that could be a thing. She is protected by Brienne of Tarth, so that's good. Brienne was loyal to Catelyn Stark, and now has a kind of a separate admiration for Sansa, for sure. But Sansa, man, she's finding her voice. She's been around death a lot, but she hasn't killed anybody yet, so that kind of makes her rare. A little bit. So man, I don't know. Is she going to make it to the end? That's kind of where we start talking. I think that's what we start talking about now. Do these characters make it to the end? And I don't know. She could be too pure to last, but we shall see. They're sitting next to her is Jon, who is, raised as brother and sister, and that's not really true because he's half Targaryen and half Stark, Jon is. But he leads at Winterfell, right? So he's king of the North. And, Ned wasn't king, Eddard Stark. Ned wasn't, king of the North, but he in effect ruled the North. Robb was king of the North. So the first king, and they're both dead. Robb and Ned. And Sansa points that out to him later. Jon wants to do what he thinks is right, and you see that in the scene with the Karstarks and the Umbers. But this has gotten him killed before, doing what he thought was right. And he does need to get his shit together because they haven't talked once about Daenerys Targaryen and her dragons about to make shore in Westeros with the Dothraki and Unsullied army, which was never thought possible. So the fact that they haven't even mentioned it or talked about it kind of seems like they're letting it slip. Also, they let slip Cersei, which they had to be literally threatened and informed. So, I don't know. That's kind of weird. All right, so then the Winterfell scene. Man, that was really cool. So it kind of opens with them talking about Dragonglass, and they need to get as much of it as possible. And then it switches to the issue of training, whom they shall train to fight the army of the dead. And Jon wants to train women too. It's when Lord Glover opposes. He's just like, what am I supposed to do? Put a spear in my granddaughter's hand? That's preposterous. And there's a lot of strong women present. So there's people that are capable of standing up. There's Sansa, there's Brienne of Tarth, and they could immediately, shut him down. And the quickest to the draw is Lyanna Mormont. And she's like, I don't need your permission to defend the North. And she makes her declaration to train everyone. And she kind of just looks around, and she's just unquestionably respected. And it was just it's beautiful to see. There's this mentality where it's just like they can't defend the North with only half the population fighting. If Lyanna Mormont, she was the first one to speak up, and at the end of this entire thing, if she's the last one left alive, and if she's in charge of rebuilding Westeros, man, I'd be okay with it. I think it was pretty good, man. She's one of those characters, though she's young and though she's a woman, and she's not supposed to be that way in this time period, maybe even in others too. But she doesn't need your permission, and I admire that. She did help put Jon in charge, though, with her speech last season, so that's kind of interesting. So the scene progresses, and Jon sends Tormund to guard the wall, and then there's this disagreement between Jon and Sansa on what to do with the Umbers and the Karstarks, and Sansa made some great points about loyalty, and Jon, man, he makes his decision, and it's final, so. That's kind of like it makes the dynamic clear. But there's still kind of that dissension. Jon feels like he is being undermined, and Sansa feels like she is just trying to express her opinion. So, they have a relationship they need to work on, and they've never had time to really get to know each other or have that communication with each other. So, the fact that they kind of, it seems like when they were talking out front, they had, it seems like they're going to get along all right. So then Cersei's threat comes, right? And this is good because Jon is focusing on the Night King, and then Sansa will defeat Cersei. And then Jon says to Sansa that you almost admire her after Sansa reiterates how strong of a threat that Cersei is, and that she is a force that needs to be dealt with. Jon's thinking differently. Jon's thinking about the entire Lannister army, and there's no way that the entire army is going to march this far north. But that's not what needs to happen. That's not what could happen. And this cold open showed us that it doesn't take an entire army to eliminate a house from Westeros. Arya was able to do it single-handedly. So if Cersei was able to just get a small band of assassins together and send them to take out Jon and Sansa, then that would send the North into chaos. And then there's the Jaime and the Cersei scene. And we'd been wanting this because there's a lot that these two characters needed to talk about. Cersei murdered a whole bunch of people. Their son had died, their last of the remaining 3 children they had together. And then Cersei seized the Iron Throne for herself. So we talk about the transformation of these characters, and these characters had always been very close, Jaime and Cersei, both figuratively and literally. Let's talk about him a moment. Okay, so Jaime first, man, he started out hating Jaime. They wanted you to hate him because he was the Kingslayer and Ned hated him, right? So just absolute the worst. And he pushed Bran out of the window, right, at the very beginning of the pilot. But that does kind of seem like so long ago, right? The moment he lost his hand, that kind of changed the character fundamentally, right? Because he was known as the greatest fighter in all of Westeros. Maybe him or Ned, though Ned was maybe past the prime. But he had to find a new identity, Jaime did. He was no longer the greatest fighter once he lost his hand, and he had to find a new identity. So, luckily he had Brienne with him while he was trying to do that. And saving her, that kind of made him a better person. That kind of made us start to love him again. And he may, at the end of the day, at the end of this entire series, he may be the one that ends up killing Cersei. He may have to, being the Kingslayer, he may have to do it again, because if Cersei's going to try to burn them all, I don't know. I don't know what Jaime's going to do. Okay, Cersei. Where has that character come from? Right now she is the queen of a divided country. It is no longer the 7 kingdoms, and she no longer has her children. She is also doing this. She is the queen under the Baratheon name. She can adorn as many Lannister sigils as she would like in that throne room, but, we saw it in the opening credits. It is the Baratheon, dynasty that she is living under. She mentions that word, dynasty. You can't have that if you're not doing it under your name and if you don't have anybody to carry it on. So she is right now fighting for the sake of fighting. She has nothing left of real value. She has no family. She has no counsel. She has no morality. The only thing that you think that she might have left is Jaime. But you see this at the end of the scene here, that she still blames him for Tyrion. She blames him for, she blames him for letting Tyrion go. And she blames Tyrion for everything, for killing their mother, killing their father, killing Joffrey. She had wanted this moment for so long to stand and be in control of everything and everyone around her, and, not be oppressed and subjugated by the men in her life. And she finally has it. And, the ends did not justify the means. And it kind of seems like she's trying to force it to. All right. So then the scene that Jaime and Cersei have together, right? They talk of Daenerys, they talk of Tyrion, and, that's where Cersei blames Jaime. And she declares that, there's just enemies everywhere, and that's true. They got enemies all around them, and then they have really nothing left to fight for. Their children are dead. They talk about Tommen for the first time, and Cersei has moved on. It kind of really seemed like she had moved on the moment he died. She knew all the children were going to die. And, she believed the prophecy was going to come true, so she accepted Tommen's death before Tommen even died. So the Lannisters need allies, and that's the Greyjoys. They talk about that, So, Euron comes in, and he proposes marriage. Kind of tries to be, kind of tries to be funny. Kind of tries to be a dick. I don't know. Really didn't work. But so he gets denied, and he vows to return with a gift. And there's this big talk about what this gift is going to be. Tyrion had been called a gift before when he was a gift to Daenerys. So, bringing Tyrion back would be interesting. There's also a lot of speculation that it could be something related to Kill the Dragons. So, maybe it could be that. I don't know. But Cersei wants Tyrion dead along with everybody else. And Euron wants Yara and Theon dead along with kind of just like anything else he can get. So the Greyjoys have ships. That's really it. All right, now we got Samwell Tarly. And he's at Old Town. He's at the Citadel. So John sent him there last season, which was real good. And then on Sam's way, he swiped a Valyrian steel sword from his father. So he's got that somewhere. He's got Gilly, and he's got little Sam with him in tow. So he's eventually, he's essentially kind of where he wants to be. And because he gets to learn and read, and his girl is safe, and his kid is safe, and he's safe. But he is shoveling shit, just shit and shit and shit. And it's not really that good. But he is learning stuff and he wants to learn more. So that's good, right? He wants to learn about the hidden, locked up stuff. So he pleads his case to the Archmaester, because he's like, man, I've seen some shit. The Night King is coming. I need access to that info. The Archmaester tells him, people always think the end of times is near. They've always thought that. They thought that during Robert's Rebellion, and they thought that, before that and after that. And they're always going to think that. And the wall has always survived. There's a wall. It's always been there. It's always survived. Winter's always came. Winter has always left. And then, so he's like, no, you can't have access to that stuff and clean this shit up. Goodbye. And then the Archmaester leaves, and then we'll be flashed forward to like night where he's asleep, and Sam sneaks on in there, and just swipes some keys. He just swipes and just starts looking shit up. So that's pretty good. All right, and then Sansa gets another scene. She gets a scene with Peter Baelish, which is really interesting. She gets a little bit of screen time with Brienne, which is kind of cool. But the scene opens with Brienne of Tarth teaching Podrick Payne how to fight, which is like the best thing in the entire world for him, because he learned a lot from Tyrion, did not learn how to fight from him for sure. So learning from Brienne, that's just gonna be fantastic. And then Tormund is super turned on by the entire series of events, because he wants to mate with Brienne so bad. Like, he's a big dude, and she's a big woman, and he just wants to just impregnate her and have babies just like so bad. So he's just licking her lips, and nobody's looked at Brienne like that, like in her entire life. So she's just like incredibly taken back. But man, Tormund doesn't care. He wants some. So then Littlefinger and Sansa talk, man, and Sansa gets the better of that exchange by a lot. And that's interesting because, man, she was maybe looking for a little bit of steam to blow off about being shut down by Jon. But man, she kind of lets him have it a little bit, So Peter Baelish wants to know, if Sansa is safe and is happy. And she confirms that she's safe, but can't really deny that she's not happy. But she really just kind of spins out of the question, and she dismisses him, just real sassy like. It was great. And then Brienne wants to know why they're still there, and Sansa's right when she tells her that Littlefinger saved him, and he did, with his army, and he feels like he is owed for that, and Sansa feels like she is owed for bringing him aboard. So there's a little bit of brewing. So if Littlefinger's not happy, then everybody better watch out a little bit. All right, and then Arya gets another scene, and this is the Ed Sheeran scene, man. And I hate to call it that, but there's really like no other way to kind of go about it, man. The scene was really good, but the aftermath that y'all gave Ed Sheeran was just absolutely ridiculous. You made that man quit Twitter for a little bit. Oof, that was tough. But it was a good scene. There was a lot to offer about Arya, because it kind of showed where she is, kind of mentally and morally. So the way that Arya handles this situation tells us a lot about where she is mentally and morally, right? Because she could just kill them all, all these half a dozen or so Lannister soldiers that she's just happened upon in this forest, But she is offered guest rights, not into a house or a home, so it's not exactly what the Freys did to the Starks at the Red Wedding, but it is in the same ballpark. She thought about killing them the whole time. She checked their weapons and the distance from each person. And then she decides not to. And this could be a mistake at the end because they do fight for Cersei and House Lannister, which is now just declared war on the Starks, right? And sending the threatening message. So she may, Arya may have to kill these people later anyway. But anyway, so she's, the scene. So Arya is, leaving Walder Frey and the twins. And he happens upon half a dozen or so men just around the campfire. And they're just generous and off guard, right? This is not necessarily a jackpot, because if she really needed anything that she would, if she needed anything, she got it from House Frey. But this is kind of a big score. It's Lannister soldiers with their clothing. She could steal it, head to King's Landing, and move around with one of their faces in uniform. You know, sell the armor and gold and weapons. You know, but she doesn't. You know, they start kind of talking. You know, she could kill everybody. She can kill them all and take all of it and sell it, and it would probably take her about 20 to 30 seconds. You know, but she's a little surprised and taken back by their generosity. You know, when they say things like, be kind to strangers and strangers will be kind to you. You know, Arya's taken back. You know, she's learned a different lesson. Her family has learned a different lesson. And she, you know, doesn't want to trust this, you know, instinct that she has, but it's her better nature. You know, and it has been reached. You know, there's talk of fathers and babies and daughters. They pass around wine. So now this is like food and alcohol with peers, you know? So, and this is like Arya's first real party, you know? Like, spin the bottle and never have I ever was going to come up next, you know? You know, so she kind of still throws it out there. You know, there is a killer inside her. So, you know, when they ask her, where you going? She's like, King's Landing. I'm going to go kill the queen. You know, she just says it deadpan, you know, to a group of soldiers, you know, in direct response to a question. You know, and it's laughter. You know, she gets away with it. So there was this look that maybe she was, you know, happy she didn't have to kill him, and maybe she was surprised that she didn't have to either. But we've seen already this season in these two scenes this season with Arya that we've seen the killing, you know, we've seen the killing side to Arya, and then we've seen the compassionate side to Arya. All right, so the next scene is the scene with the Hound, you know, and I like the scenes with the Hound because that's an interesting character because he's been through a lot. I mean, they've all been through a lot, and they all have tremendous journeys and character arcs. But the Hound, man, that's a good one too. You know, so he's riding around with the Brotherhood without banners right now. So he's hanging out with Beric Dondarrion, who's the dude with the eye patch, and then Thoros of Myr, who's the dude with the top knot. So, you know, they're riding around, and it's winter, it's just cold as shit, and they come upon the house, you know. And, you know, Sandor's already in a bad mood, he says, because of experience. And, you know, and he comes across upon the house that he and Arya had seen, you know, that we saw on the previously on. So it's not enough that we're on the outside looking in of this house. You know, this is Game of Thrones, right? They got to take us inside. So we go inside and we see that, in fact, that those two characters are dead, that father and the daughter. And just like the Hound predicted, that they come winter, they would be dead. He was right. You know, and then there's this discussion. And the Hound and Beric Dondarrion, they react differently. You know, Beric, you know, he kind of wants, he poses a starvation scenario, and his mind kind of wants to know what happened. You know, that they took their own lives instead of facing the starvation of winter. You know, Sandor might not have even seen the knife, you know, and he doesn't really want to play Beric's game. You know, Sandor Clegane, he is seeing death just all around him, just always and everywhere. He still has a personal code to himself, though it's wavered from time to time. But he is lost. He is a lost soul. He is a lost person. And he's there with Beric, who, you know, is a chosen person from the Lord of Light, has been brought back to life with the help with Thoros of Myr. And Sandor Clegane, from his perspective, you know, he thinks that Beric is not lost. He sees Beric as a found person. You know, and so why? You know, what's so great about this person that the Lord of Light keeps bringing him back? So he asks him. Beric doesn't know, and he wonders why as well. You know, what is his purpose in life? What is Beric's? What is the Hound's? You know, what is each and every one of us? Right? That's kind of what always makes the show great. It gets us to ask those questions. You know, and Sandor Clegane, he's unhappy, the Hound, right? He's unhappy with these answers, right? Because he says if God is all-powerful, then why doesn't he just tell you what he wants, right? And we always want, you know, people have been asking that since the beginning of time, right? And then Sandor gets his answer. He gets it in the fire, right? And it's his greatest phobia, right? Fire, because he had been burned by his brother. And this is a coincidence or it's not, right? That, you know, that they're fire gods and he has a phobia of fire. But he sees the vision, right? He sees the wall, he sees the castle there, and then the fire pops as if it's talking back to us, lets us know that he's not crazy, that some stuff's really going on. And then Sandor looks back in the flames and he sees a mountain. And it could be his brother that everybody wants that they'll eventually fight again. Or it could be like a literal mountain that's shaped like an arrowhead. They say that next. And then he sees the army of the dead because it's on their way. So now Sandor has purpose. So now the Hound has purpose again. And then he buries the bodies, there in the kind of the middle of the night. And this shows that he still has a humanity, right? That he's still a person. He's not dead. He's not one of the army of the dead. He is a living human being. And he's going to act as such. And this also kind of nod to book readers, which I am not. But the Hound hasn't come back in the books yet, and he kind of looks like this grave digger that's been hanging around a little bit. So this is kind of a nod that that's him. So then the Thorosmir helps him, bury him up a little bit, and they kind of have like a mutual tolerance, I guess, kind of a joking respect, maybe a little bit. He kind of likes him a little bit, I think, and he likes Beric, I think, too, a little bit. So that's nice. And then he says his prayer, Sandor. He says his prayer, which is kind of funny because he can't really remember the first line past what he's supposed to say, And I always kind of remember that at funerals or religious services too, where you just like go out on the whole prayer and you're like, man, I remember the first line real well. Then after that, you kind of get a little fuzzy. So that's what he does, and then he's just like, man, whatever. I'm sorry you're dead. You deserve better. So that kind of tells a lot about that. Tells a lot about the Hound. It's a lot to go into for just a side character, but man, that scene was well worth it. All right, and then Sam gets another scene. So we're back at Old Town, and this is the Citadel, and it's Sam, it's Gilly, it's little Sam, and they're just going through books, and then Sam kind of starting to doze off a little bit. He's going through some pages, and then the internet was good about picking up on these pages. There was one there about how to cure grayscale, which is, kind of like half written. They say, eat dragon glass. And then there was a picture of the cat's paw assassin dagger that was used on Brandon Stark at the season 1. So, that's making it all the way back now here, 7 seasons later. So that's kind of cool that it's Valyrian steel, and the internet is thinking that Peter Baelish has that right now. I think I read that Peter Baelish may have that dagger somewhere. So that's kind of cool. And then that there's a bunch of dragon glass underneath Dragonstone. So that makes sense. The Dragon Queen is going to Dragonstone, where there's a bunch of dragon glass. Okay, got it. Man, that makes sense. So he sends word to Jon, writes it down, sends it to him. Go to Dragonstone, because that's where then Dany will be there too. And then we see, as Sam is making the rounds, he comes across Jorah Mormont, and he's got the grayscale real bad now. And, it's kind of the question, is he a patient? Is he a prisoner? Because, I don't know if you can really be both, and he looks like he's one more than the other. But it seems like Sam will save him. It seems like the Sam storyline is just going to kind of come down to dragonglass, grayscale, cat's paw assassin dagger, Jorah Mormont. I think as long as you got those, I think you'll be all right with Sam. All right, and then Dany gets her scene. I guess it's Dany and Tyrion get their scene, but man, I guess it's really Dany's scene. She arrives home at Dragonstone. She's finally home. And it's 5 minutes and 30 seconds of no talking, and then 3 words at the end, and then the end credits, and everybody kind of loses their shit again, because, man, it was a good way to end it. So we'll go through it maybe here a little bit, but... we'll talk about the two characters, the two principal characters there, Tyrion and Dany, and they're there. They've gotten there in very different ways, though, right? So Tyrion first. Tyrion Lannister, we're going to be, spoilers alerting here, but we're not going to, I hold the impression that Tyrion is actually a Targaryen, half Targaryen, half Lannister, and Tyrion and Tywin Lannister was not his father. The internet would kind of show you on theories about that, and book readers are much more well-versed to discuss it than I am, but it kind of seems like, that's the way the show has been kind of laying some clues, I think, too, and we can go over that later. But Tyrion is loved by Jaime Lannister, his brother, for sure. Hated by Cersei, the sister and now queen, for sure. Tyrion, all the way back in season 1, more of just like a drunken fool. That's really kind of what we thought of him, though he did have some intelligence to him. Season 2, he becomes the Blackwater hero and defeats Stannis. So you kind of think like, okay, there's really something going on there. Marry Sansa. After that, at some time, Joffrey dies. He's on trial for Joffrey's murder for a bit. There's a trial by combat in which Oberyn Martell gets it real bad. And then He's sentenced to death by his father, so that's kind of tough. There's the killing of Tywin after that, man. So he's got to kill his dad, and then he's got to hightail it out of there with the help of Jaime and Varys. He leaves Westeros, comes across Dany, and then really just changes even exponentially after that once he sees Dany escape on Drogon, because he had been somebody that had been, you know, an academic and kind of believed what he saw, and then now that he had saw that, he had to change everything that he believed, you know. And then watching Dany retake her city after she had to flee on Drogon, that was another big thing. So now he is hand to the queen, and he is back in Westeros. And then Daenerys, you know, I mean, this is really her scene, and man, what a moment really it was for her to come home to Westeros. She had never been here before, you know. I guess she was born here and then had to flee, so that's wrong. She did have to, but she's back, you know. Her family had the Iron Throne. Robert's Rebellion displaced her and her brother, and from then on, it has been a battle to get to this moment. She said in the pilot, "I want to go home," and her brother Viserys asked her, you know, "How do you propose you do that?" You know, well, it took her 7 years, but she found a way. She found a way with not only herself, but a trusted council with Tyrion, Missandei, and Varys, her armies of the Dothraki and the Unsullied, and then also her 3 dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion. So, man, she is well stocked. But man, it was a battle for her to get here for sure. You know, she was, you know, tormented by the men in her life with her brother Viserys, her husband. You know, sold into marriage with him. Although that relationship, you know, did form a strong passion and connection, but it did not start out that way for sure. He died. You know, man, that was tough. Took that hard. The dragons then came out of his death, though, so that was kind of cool. Man, she lost those dragons for a bit, got those dragons back, you know, so that took about a season. And then the Unsullied, you know, she gets her Unsullied army, and, you know, then she has to fight against the Great Masters for a little bit, and then eventually has to, you know, retake Meereen. So then Jorah brings him Tyrion, you know, and then after that, she, you know, gets attacked again, flees, ends up getting the Dothraki after a series of turns of events, and now after all of that, she is back in Westeros in this epic scene that they ended with. So let's kind of go through it. All right, so the final scene. Daenerys arrives at Dragonstone. You know, you see they're sailing up in the small boats, and she's flanked with you know, with her council of Tyrion, Missandei, and Varys. You don't see Grey Worm, though, in that moment, and you think, like, man, where's that dude at? And you think, like, well, hopefully he's already kind of running through the castle as part of the scout team. But, you know, the dragons are flying overhead, and really just Daenerys is home, you know. So she gets out the boat, and she places her hand on the sand. You know, and this was a promise that we were made 7 years ago, that Daenerys was going to come home to Westeros, and it is finally fulfilled. You know, so it's kind of like, now what, right? So she walks up the steps, and still at this time, no words have been spoken, right? This is 5 minutes and 30 seconds of it's just a lot of just taking it all in. And, you know, the audience knew what this meant, you know? So, you know, the music's playing, and, you know, the gates open, and the castle reveals itself to her. She makes the long walk, you know, just with anticipation in every step. She was good, too, man, because she got to be cool about it, man. People were watching, so she couldn't just be like a Black Friday shopper when the doors open. She just couldn't just been, like, running up to the gates, you know. That wouldn't have been good. You know, but she's walking on in, you know, walking into the throne room, and you see Grey Worm now, and he's walking behind. So now the crew's complete, you know, and Yara and Theon, they're not there yet, you know, maybe not in the crew yet, but they got to be hanging out in the harbor or something. You know, so she walks in, and she sees Stannis' flaming heart banners, and she just casually pulls it down, just kind of after looking at it in disgust. You know, goes into the throne room, you know, and it kind of mirrors King's Landing a little bit, but it's just much darker, you know, a little bit more tormented. And then Dany approaches the throne, and, you know, there's this acknowledgement that she can kind of understand that the throne is hers, but, you know, there's far too much work to do than to just kind of sit and hang on it now. Plus, it's not really the throne that she wants. So, Grey Worm does want to follow her. So that's just kind of this cool moment where Missandei stops him and kind of just you know, hold on, man, just give her some space. You know, like she knows what she's doing. So, you know, that was really cool. And you know, so they kind of walk. You know, Daenerys walks past the throne and into the small council room in the back where there's that large map. And she kind of runs her hands along the table map there, which is kind of cool. And online, after this episode premiered, everybody was quick to point out how Stannis and Melisandre, the Red Woman, had man, they had sex on that table there, that table map. So Dany shouldn't touch it. And they were like, "No, Daddy, don't touch it." And it was actually really kind of funny. But yeah, so now it's just Daenerys and Tyrion, and they're the only two in the room now, and they're kind of just taking it all in. Like this is the new office, these are the new digs. All right, kind of look, and Tyrion's ready. Kind of looks at Daenerys, and Daenerys is like, "All right, man, okay, cool." And then boom, shall we begin?